Everybody can do the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag.
flag, United States of America, to the republic
for
which it stands,
One nation,
under God,
liberty and justice.
liberty, and
Liberty
justice
and
for
justice for all.
All right, in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Egg Harbor City Common Council special meeting was provided in the following manner. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City Hall bulletin board. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City website. Advance written notice of this meeting was sent to the Hamilton Gazette, the News, the Press, and the Current. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing requirements, the meeting is being conducted via Zoom and conference call. The meeting is also being recorded to air on the Egg Harbor City website and Channel 97. I also may say before we get started, on behalf of the mayor, city council, and our professionals in attendance, we would like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their Wednesday night to join us for this public meeting regarding the sale of the water treatment facility. We understand there are many questions that will want to be asked. With that being said, please bear with us as we try to facilitate the meeting as best as possible, answering as many, if not all, the questions presented. We also ask that everyone keep their devices muted during the meeting until speaking. This will hopefully eliminate any background noise while you or others are speaking. I would like to now begin the meeting and turn it over to, I believe, the representatives from New Jersey.
So can we do a roll call, please, first?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Roll call.
Mayor Petty? Here. Brown? Clark?
Here.
Dash?
Here.
Heist?
Here.
Sefton?
Here.
Timbers?
Here.
Trythall?
here.
Wright?
Here.
Ritchie?
Yes, here.
And also, is Brown here?
I saw her up there.
She is listed as a participant.
I was chewing something. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she's-
Okay, I'm good.
All right, thank you, Meg. And now with that,
Mr. President, I have one concern. On that notice, it was brought to my attention. I overlooked it. It said that questions had to be into the city clerk by the 22nd, even though it was distributed on the 25th. Was that a typo? I apologize.
It was distributed on the 13th,
Oh, the 13th. Okay, my apologies.
and I did not get any questions. That was if they wanted to submit them ahead of time. Call in was something different, so.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Meg.
You're welcome.
Okay, I turn the floor over to the presentation.
So I'm actually going to lead in and give some history of how we got here. I think it's important to this has been a lengthy process. That there's been a lot of time and effort and thought that has gone into it to bring us to this point. So everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to first start by saying that this is it's an information session for the public, but it's also for city council. We don't have the ability to meet with all 9 council members at one time without being in a public meeting, without being in a setting like this. So there was a utility committee that we worked closely with. That was 4 members of the council at the time. A few of those members are no longer on council. So, you know, it's important for everyone to get up to speed and have as much information as possible. So, you know, again, as much as this is a public information session, it's also for, you know, the council members themselves. So going back to the beginning of how we got here, the Water Quality Assurance Act was passed by the state in July of 2017. It required a capital needs assessment and capital needs management plan be prepared by each water and sewer system owner and operator. So it was a requirement that the city had to undertake. We looked at that and we included a rate study because we essentially knew that you know, any of the funded improvements would require additional funds to be able to pay for them. The city was not, you know, did not have a significant capital budget. So we felt it was important to do a rate study along with the capital needs assessment so we could figure out what we needed to do and how we could pay for it. as we got into it, as we sort of already knew, we found that most of the system was well past its useful life. A lot of the system is pre-1910, a lot of it 1930, 1940s expansions. So there's a good portion of the system that's over 100 years old, and much of it is fast approaching that age. So the result of that was a recommendation for about $38 million worth of improvements to meet industry recommendations over the next 20 years after that study. That amount of money equates to about the total revenue for the utility for that 20-year period. So if we didn't spend a dollar on anything else, we didn't pay for our electric, we didn't pay the ACUA, we didn't pay our bonds, we could pay for those improvements over 20 years, but nothing else. So it's a significant impact to the city and the utility budget. So we pared it down to what is essential upgrades. We came up with about $14 million in what we consider to be highly recommended improvements over the next 20 years. To pay for that, you need about $760,000 a year in additional revenue, which equated to about a 40% rate increase at the time. Along with the WQA came a requirement that the city would have to fund replacement of 1/150th of the total system length annually. As I noted, there was no annual capital budget, so that required about $377,000 in additional revenue that the city had to start collecting. That is what you all see on your bills as the WQAA fee. For the average user, it was about a 15% rate increase, but given what we had projected, it was less than half of what we were recommending to achieve the capital improvement plan. The tail end of that study was a system valuation. We looked at it a couple of different ways. There's a couple different standards that you're supposed to evaluate by. One of them is original cost less depreciation. We came up with a value of about $21 million. Replacement cost less depreciation was about $43 million. And then there's a market valuation, which is just based on value per number of accounts based on previous sales. And we came with a value of about $9 to $12 million for the total system. At the time, the utility had a debt of $17 million. So we started looking around for ways to try to provide rate relief and find ways to make the recommended improvements. Obviously, one of the things we turned to was selling or leasing the system assets. We looked back to a law that had just been passed a couple of years prior, the WIPA law, Water Infrastructure Protection Act, which was passed in 2015 by the state. This was a new sort of untested process, which was really designed to maximize the value and increase the flexibility of the process. It was no longer just a sealed high bid, you're stuck with whoever it is, and hopefully you can sort out the details. And then that process has always ended in a referendum, which is a public vote where every voting, everyone who chooses to vote, who is eligible to vote in the city, gets their say on whether to sell the system or not. Obviously, it's a challenge to educate everyone on what they're actually voting on. So it's really difficult to manage the expectations and get people to understand what their choices really are in a referendum situation. So the WIPA process allows for DEP to evaluate what are called emergent conditions. And if an emergent condition exists, they would approve the process, you would move forward and be eligible to sell without having a referendum. We reviewed the process with the city. We talked about possible outcomes. It's certainly possible that we would get an offer that was insufficient to cover even the city's utility debt. It's possible that they could have exceeded that number and could have cleared their debt and have net proceeds after the sale. At this point in time, we didn't really know what to expect. Again, we had a market valuation of 9 to 12 million and a replacement cost less depreciation of 43 million. So it's a pretty broad range. We started down the path of preparing the first WIPA application in the state. We are WIPA application number 001. We're the first municipality to actually initiate the process and begin to move forward with it. The state qualifies emergent conditions. There's 5 of them. They are if you are located in an area of critical water supply or concern. We are not. We are on the edge of one, but we're not technically in one, so we didn't qualify under that. The owner is a significant non-complier. and that is with state or federal regulations. We are not. The system has been very well managed, very efficiently managed, so that you have gotten as much out of the system as possible, and they have avoided violations and done a really good job of keeping up with all the requirements. So the third one was a present deficiency or violation in an MCL, which is a maximum contaminant level, as identified by the Safe Drinking Water Act. So if you have an ongoing violation, you're exceeding an MCL and you can't really fix it, you can't find a way to do it, you can enter this process as an emergent condition. Number 4 was a demonstrated lack of historical investment, repair, sustainable maintenance, or material damage to the infrastructure or system. That seemed to describe the city system fairly well. We had a whole bunch of stuff that was 100 or so years old and no plans to replace it. So we applied under emergent condition number 4. Emergent condition number 5 is that the owner lacks the financial, technical, or managerial capacity to adequately address any of the foregoing on a sustainable basis, or to own and operate the system in a way that supports economic activity in the municipality on a sustainable basis. So a bit of a mouthful, but essentially you don't have the ability, either technical or financial, to continue to own and operate the system. So we applied under that one as well, because we knew that we had significant needs and did not have the financial capacity to address those needs without, raising the city's rates through the roof. So again, we petitioned under emergent conditions number 4 and 5. DEP reviewed our application. They had to sort of figure out what the process was going to be as we were going through it, because it was the first time. They denied our application for number 4, which is the lack of historical investment. They essentially said, well, you could increase rates now and make whatever repairs you needed to. You're not regulated by BPU. You could increase your rates by 50% if that's what you need to do, which is not a great answer for us, but that was their answer. However, when they reviewed condition number 5, they dug into it a little deeper, and they actually met with experts from iBank and DCA, who are municipal finance experts. Based on our recommendations on what needed to be replaced, they determined the city had about $5 million in bonding capacity and $14 million in needs. So obviously there's a bit of a gap. So the state ultimately approved our WIP application because we lacked the financial capacity to make the required improvements. We proceeded, the next step was an RFQ, a request for qualifications. We received 3 responses. We advertised sort of accidentally, but ultimately in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And we received 3 responses, one from New Jersey American Water, one from Aqua New Jersey, and one from the Vico Infrastructure Company. New Jersey American Water is actually a national company. New Jersey portion is a subsidiary. Aqua NJ, a subsidiary of Aqua USA. And then Vico Infrastructure Company was a partnership with a couple other companies that was backed by the Carlyle Group, which is one of the largest capital companies on the planet. So we felt that we got good responses. We deemed all 3 of the responses as qualified and eligible to move on to the detailed RFP process. That's where each respondent looks at what your system is and what the details of what owning and operating your system would mean to them. I'll note at this point that the Carlyle Group, the Vico Infrastructure Group, their proposal was actually for a lease, a long-term asset lease of the system. So we reviewed each response. We looked at system investment that each were promising, rates, operations, response times, hydrant fees, all kinds of factors that they had to be responsive on. And getting back to the Vico proposal, we eliminated that one first. They really focused on efficiency. Had we, had numerous employees who were not carrying their weight and we were having issues, that efficiencies could bring the rates down and help us fund some of these improvements, that would have been a viable option. But this was not. You guys have a very well-managed system. There's nothing that you could do more efficiently. You're really bare bones operation. So it did not expand the ratepayer base at all, the Vico proposal. So we didn't see any way to gain any relief out of their proposal. So unfortunately, we had to eliminate them from the process. So it came down to New Jersey American Water and Aqua New Jersey. Evaluating their proposals, New Jersey American's rates at the time of their submission are 12.6% lower than the city's current rates. They offered a response time about 20 minutes in the daytime and 30 minutes at nighttime. Their hydrant fees were lower. There were a lot of positives. Aqua's proposal had some positives, a lot of investment they were promising, but off the bat, their rates were 25% higher than the city's current rates. They were also offering a 2-hour response time, which was not very attractive to the city. So one of the things that the utility committee, again, was focused on was trying to provide ratepayer relief. So that wasn't going to be an option with Aqua. At best, they would adopt our current rates, and then at their first rate case hearing 2 to 3 years from now, they would petition to go to their rates, which would ultimately result in a 25% increase for ratepayers, which was not what the council members and the committee members were looking to achieve. So based on that, and it was obviously a more thorough evaluation. This is the simplified version. But ultimately, we selected New Jersey American to begin negotiations. That was a non-binding step at the time. We're still not bound at this point, but that allowed us to begin discussion with New Jersey American, work on developing the agreement, talk about a purchase price, things of that nature. The process to this point did not bring up purchase price at all. It was focused on rate relief, service to the community, and ultimately the best option, not just the most value that the city could get back in a purchase price. So a third-party appraisal was completed above and beyond what we put together as a system valuation. Everybody knew that was going to be required for a BPU review. And once we had that, we really started negotiations with New Jersey American. We pushed for an immediate rate decrease. We tried to maximize the value to the city. Ultimately, we negotiated a sale price of $21.8 million and an immediate rate reduction of 5% on the water rates. That purchase price of $21.8 million results in an acquisition cost of over $7,000 per account. The city has about 3,100 accounts, water and sewer accounts combined. Previous sales that we're aware of in the state of New Jersey range between $778 and $4,500 per account. A sale in Haddonfield a couple years ago, a municipality which has 3 times the amount of accounts as a Carver City does approximately, resulted in a sale of $3,167 per account. So the purchase price negotiated is 55% higher than any previous sale in the state of New Jersey that we're aware of. So we were able to provide immediate relief. We got, by account, the highest purchase price ever in the state. We felt as a committee certainly that we did, as good as we could through the negotiation process. And the end result was a very, very good deal for the city. And after that, we've been working on negotiating this agreement for a couple of months. New Jersey American's attorneys, the city solicitor has done a great job of pouring through and protecting the city by sort of crafting language that's obviously more favorable to the city. That draft agreement was circulated, I believe a couple of days ago at this point. And we felt it was important to circulate that, to have this public information session, and frankly, we'll continue to listen going forward, because this is the first sale that will not end with a referendum. Only the 9 council people will vote on this, and it will need to pass by a 2/3 vote. But we really wanted to stress, and this is not the first public information session, we wanted to stress that involving the public and having public input is important to this process. It's required through some of the initial steps through the WIPA process, but more than that, we've gone above and beyond what the minimum of what's required. We just felt it was important for the public to be involved, to have the opportunity to be heard, because again, they won't be heard via vote at the end. So we want the public and council members to all be confident that this is the right decision for the city moving forward. So that is the history of this process, how we've gotten here. And that's it for me. At this point, I want to turn it over to New Jersey American, let them give their presentation, explain what they are, who they are, and how they've approached this and how they would like to move forward.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Nick DeBeckis. I'm the Senior Manager of Business Development for New Jersey American Water. I have with me tonight David Forcinito, who's our Senior Director of Operations. And I want to tell you a little bit more about the transaction before you here. I got to admit, Ryan stole a lot of my thunder. He did a really good job giving you the history and the background of how we've gotten to where we've gotten. And I just want to also commend the city for the steps you've taken to date. This wasn't something that was kind of just dreamed up, in a back office somewhere and pushed through quickly. You've been in this now for almost 5 years. I think this, Ryan, helped me, but this goes back to 2016 or 2017 when you really started in earnest.
Yep.
Looking at this problem, identifying ways to address the challenge before you, and ultimately bringing it to kind of where we are here, in the red zone, trying to bring this to close. So I commend the professionals at the city and the city council and the mayor for getting it, to this stage, and we look forward to bringing it to a conclusion at some point this year. With that as an opener, I will see if I can share my screen here, see if my technology will work. If somebody could give me a head nod, if you can see my slide deck. Good there, okay, great. All right, so we're excited about this. That's kind of how I want to start this off. New Jersey American Water is a water and wastewater utility, the largest in the state of New Jersey. We serve 192 communities already in the state. That's over 2.7 million people who get their water provided by us. That's all we do. We're a water and a wastewater company. Our sole focus of the 800 plus employees we have in the state is providing clean, safe, reliable water and wastewater service to customers. And we're excited because when we get an opportunity to grow our customer base, to grow our business, it's something that just people get excited about, especially when it's a system like the city has here. This is a really nice fit for us. There's real geographic proximity between our regional system in this part of the state and the city system. We serve about 63,000 customers on the water side, 15,000 customers on the sewer side, right in your backyard in what we call our south operations along the shore in Atlantic and Cape May County. And this is a really good fit for us. We very easily integrate this into our larger regional system and provide some redundancy and resiliency for the city. The city system is 3 wells on the water side, is 3 wells, a treatment plant, and a tank. No emergency interconnections, no backup supply, no resiliency, no redundancy. If something happens to treatment capability or one or more of your wells, you have a challenge on your hand in addressing that issue before you. When you're part of a larger regional system like ours, there's options. And we're located about a half a mile away from the city system right now. What Dave's going to tell you about in a little bit is how we intend to connect the system, so he provides you that resiliency and redundancy that any water system really, quite frankly, should have in this day and age, with the frequency and intensity of storms, with the challenges we see in the water industry, with water quality. Just having kind of a backup source is really critical to the long-term operation of a 21st century water utility. And we bring that to the table almost right out of the gate, connecting your system with our larger regional utility. So the fit makes a lot of sense for us. Acquisition capital investment. We are a capital investment company. We're only successful when we're investing in aging utilities. And when we have an opportunity to acquire an aging utility that needs work, which, as you heard from Ryan, there's a lot of investment needs in the city. And we look forward to helping you address that, to helping you tackle that. In New Jersey alone, we spend $1 million per day, over $365 million a year, investing in water and wastewater utilities. So this is what we do. This is our bread and butter. We live, eat, breathe, sleep water, and putting capital to work where it's needed in aging utilities. And we're committing to $9 million of investment in the system in the first 5 years, and $14 million in the first 10. So we've taken a look at what R&V has put together, Remington and Vernick, the capital program that they think needs to be implemented in the city. And we're going to commit, in writing in the agreement, to make those investments in your utility. And Dave will talk to you a few slides later about, what those specific investments are and why they're needed, and how we plan to tackle them. The third thing here, short and long-term rate stability. The first question anyone who's considering selling a utility is what's up with the rates? Where are my rates going to go? And I'll talk to you a few slides later about, where your rates have been in the last few years. I know rates is a very contentious issue, particularly in the city, given the rate increases you've seen in the past couple of years. But New Jersey American is really going to provide that stable or lower rates that the city council has requested and required of the successful bidder. I credit the council and the professionals that put the RFP and the RFQ together and insisting upon that. Stable or lower rates was a requirement of our bid. And if we couldn't do that, if we couldn't show that or prove that, we weren't going to be successful here. So I'll talk to you a little more detail about what that rate stability and what that rate plan looks like for both the short and the long term. And I also will highlight our low-income customer financial assistance program. Folks that they're having trouble paying a water or sewer bill have options for relief, for us. I'm getting a little bit of feedback or some people that might not be on mute. If you could, that sounds a little better. Thank you. So we'll talk to you a little bit more about that financial assistance program for customers. A little bit more about New Jersey American. We're the leading water and wastewater utility in the state. Water Quality Accountability Act certified. That's a new piece of legislation that was put in place a couple of years ago that really just makes sure utilities are doing what they should be doing. It's easy for utilities, municipalities to, forget those underground assets, not exercise those valves, not flush those hydrants, not making sure you have your utility in a good space. But the Water Quality Accountability Act really requires you to do that. And we are, for the last 3 years, we've certified as being compliant with that act. We have a very successful track record in acquisitions. In the last 7 years, in the last 5 years, we've closed 7 similar deals of municipal systems or other private utilities. More than $100 million in investment and 33,000 connections. So we're used to this. We're used to taking struggling, aging utilities that have a large need for capital investment, bringing them into New Jersey American and helping to solve those problems. It's something that we do kind of on the regular. And then finally, and I had this here kind of at the end of my slide, and then
Nick, you got muted. I think Jody muted everyone.
okay, unmute. Can you hear me now?
You're good.
I apologize, Nick. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I thought it would keep the speaker going.
No, thank you.
Apologies.
I got a little note to unmute, so no worries.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So the last kind of bullet I have on this slide is the financial benefits of the purchase price for the city. This can't be overstated. Ryan mentioned $21.8 million purchase price. I mentioned the $14 million of capital investment in the first 10 years. And there's also $100,000 of transaction costs that we're going to reimburse the city for, up to $100,000. So those are your costs for the engineer, your costs for the attorneys, all the costs that are kind of rolled into doing this transaction, you're going to get reimbursed for as well. So that's almost a $36 million commitment that when we put ink on this agreement, we're making to Egg Harbor City, in the next 10 years. And I'll talk through, the purchase price just real quick. It's more than enough to pay off all existing debt in the city. So there's some debt associated with the water utility and the wastewater utility. That will all go away with the proceeds of the sale. I won't get into the complicated way that happens. I'll defer that to Jody and the CFO. But it's enough to cover off all that water and sewer debt, as well as all the debt sitting on the city books as well. So the way I like to kind of couch that is your mortgage, is paid off overnight once we put signatures on this deal. So there's a real benefit to the city, for that, for kind of cleaning up the financials. It makes it easier from a property tax perspective, for managing the town. That's a real benefit that can't be overlooked. But I think even more important than that is the investment. Look, the system is close to 100 years old in parts, and things don't get better. These things don't get better with age. They just deteriorate, and it requires a lot of investment. And we're committed to make that investment, and we're going to put our put our money where our mouth is on that, and start making that investment as soon as we own the system. So with that as kind of an intro and an overview of what's before you here, I'm going to pass it over to Dave Forcinito, again, our Senior Director of Operations. I'll talk to you a little bit about our operations in the area. Dave?
Thanks, Nick. I'm Dave Forcinito. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for New Jersey American Water. And I just want to go over a few slides about the operations in our coastal south region here right next to Egg Harbor City. The slide before you is showing our service area. It runs essentially from Galloway Township down to Middle Township and includes, we serve many towns in between. And you can see from the map where Egg Harbor City fits in relation to Galloway Township and our service area. The green portions of the map are actually where we have water mains in the area. And as Nick mentioned, our mains end approximately a half a mile just outside of the city. There's a star toward the bottom at Ocean City, and that's where our sewer operations are. And the other star is our main operating center for this area, and that is in Egg Harbor Township. And that operating center is where our employees are for this operation, and it is about 11 miles away from the city, located at Fire Road. Next slide. So the operations consist of about 60 employees. Eric Hahn is our local manager who runs the day-to-day operations. Our team is broken up into different groups, each responsible for a certain area. For example, we have our production team, and they're responsible for our water treatment facilities, our storage tanks, booster stations, and sewer lift stations. We have our field operations group who are responsible for what we refer to as buried assets, which are our water mains, our sewer mains, sewer laterals, as well as hydrants, valves, and customer meters. And then we have our water quality team, and they're responsible for overseeing water sampling, as well as ensuring providing oversight on our regulatory requirements, as well as our permitting. And then we have our safety team, who's responsible for the safety and well-being of our employees as we do our daily activities. And lastly, we have statewide support as well for our operation. And that from that, we have engineering group, we have communications teams, we have procurement, as well as a customer support team. All this together combined really to provide support for our customers within our operating area. We are a 24/7 operation, which means we have employees in the field 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're there primarily to handle emergencies as they come up. And lastly, when I talk about staffing, I wanted to mention too, as part of the acquisition, the water company agreed to interview and consider any employees who work for the water and sewer departments in the city. We're always looking for good employees, and we're always looking to add to our staff. So we made that commitment to the city as well for those employees. Next slide. As Nick mentioned, the water company committed to investing $14 million in the system in the first 10 years and $9 million in the first 5. And this slide shows what the $9 million is made up of in the first 5 years. There's a lot of projects listed here, but I do want to focus on a couple. As mentioned previously, the emergency interconnect, where we will interconnect the water company system with the city system. Again, it's about a half a mile away, and that provides redundancy and reliability to the city's system. We committed to upgrading sewer lift stations, as well as replacing one lift station in its entirety. In addition, as we do in our other areas, we have a routine water main and sewer main replacement program. So we will begin replacing water and sewer mains as needed. Once we identify which ones are most critical and need to be replaced, we would start that. And then lastly, I just want to focus on one other project, which is eliminating the chlorine gas at the water treatment plant. That is a safety concern, not only for our employees, but for the residents as well in the area. So we want to eliminate that system as quickly as possible. And with that, that's all I have, Nick. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So naturally you see a slide like that and think about all the capital investment that's needed in the system, there needs to be rates to pay for that, right? So then I mentioned earlier that the number one question we always get is, what's going to happen to rates if I decide to sell the system? And again, I commend the city council and the folks that professionals that put this RFP together, and that was, probably one of the top priority things that they required of the bidders, presenting that stable or lower rate plan for the residents. In the last 5 years, going back to 2016, by my math, the city rates have gone up about 50%. You've needed it. You had to kind of put in place that financial structure to allow you to make the capital investment that's required in the system. So what R&V has kind of sketched out, a 20-year capital program, is going to require money to put that to work in the utility. But being part of New Jersey American, we're able to spread the cost, the large capital need, the large capital cost in the city over a large customer base. So when we make an investment in any one of our systems, the cost of that investment gets spread over 2.7 million people in the state of New Jersey. That's 1 out of every 3 people that live in the state already. So that city requirement for the stable or lower rates, we kind of inherently bring to the table, just given our size and our scope. When New Jersey American buys pipe, we buy it in bulk. When we buy hydrants, we buy them in bulk. Valves, same thing. We have a lot of buying power, just by nature of kind of who we are and our size. And you get the advantage of that as being part of the 192, 193, if we add the city, communities that we provide service to. Not only has the city rates gone up 50% or so in the last couple of years, but the projections, if you look at the R&V report, which is available on the city website, the projections for what those rates would be in the next 10 to 20 years have that rate increasing even further, anywhere from 120 to 152% additional rate increases over the next 20 years, which equates to about 5% per year. That's significant. So basically what the city professionals are saying is that, the rates aren't going anywhere but up if we continue to own this thing as a small, independent, municipally owned utility. The option before you today and before the council to vote on in the next month or so is, partnering with a large utility that's able to kind of mitigate some of those increases that will come down the road. As Ryan mentioned, your rates are higher than a typical New Jersey American water and sewer customer. Anywhere from 10 to 15% is approximate, given how much usage somebody uses on a regular monthly basis. So your rates are already higher than ours. Typically, when we're acquiring a system, we find that a community's rates are lower. Your rates are higher already. So partnering with us just inherently kind of gives you that advantage of being able to become part of New Jersey American and with the potential to lower rates. And that's why the city, I think, was pushing, and to their credit, for some modest rate relief right out of the gate. And that's why in the negotiations we settled on a 5% reduction to water rates just pre-close. So some of that rate increase you've seen that you've borne in the last couple of years will go away the day before closing. We'll adopt rates that are 5% lower on the water side than they are today. Your sewer rates are a little bit lower than where ours are. So what we're going to do on the sewer side is adopt the existing rates as they are today when we close the transaction. So 5% reduction on water rates, sewer rates stay where they are. The city required the successful bidder, us, to freeze those rates for a minimum of 2 years. So when we acquire the system 2 years from that date, you won't see any rate change. So that rate you have now will remain for 2 years. And I should also add that the last time those rates were changed was a couple of years ago, 2019. So if you figure by the time you play this out, by the time you could see a rate increase, you're 4 or 5 years from your last increase. So there's that kind of stability that the city has kind of built into this process that gives you some certainty that you're not going to see any rate increases for the foreseeable future. All well and good, right? But the next question I get is, well, what's going to happen once those freezes are gone and once this commitment, from the company goes away? You're going to raise my rates even further. And for that, we kind of lean on what we've historically done. We can look back in history. In the last 10 years, the average rate increase for New Jersey American Water customers is about 2.6% the last decade. And we speak publicly about, the fact that, we won't hide from the fact that rates are going to increase. With the level of capital investment that's required in aging utilities in this state, utilities that were built in the 30s and 40s that have reached the end of their useful life that need capital investment, there's going to be rate increases to support that capital investment. But we try to make sure they're modest, and we try to make sure they're in that kind of 2 to 3% realm where people can handle it, people can afford it. And again, for those people that are struggling with affording their water and sewer bill, nobody should have to do that. So that's why we have a low income assistance program for those customers that can't pay the bill, just to make sure everyone has access to clean water. And being part of New Jersey American, that would provide that to the city as well. So New Jersey American Water is BPU regulated, and the BPU is the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. They regulate everything we do, from our operation to our rates. So anytime we want to change our rates, we have to go before the board in what is usually a 9 to 12 month process, and everything is on the table. Municipalities, individuals, companies can petition to intervene in that rate case and get access to all the documents. Everything's publicly available. You have the opportunity to object if you don't like where we're going with a certain rate increase. That is an option. We've had communities play a part in that rate case. They want to make sure that they've seen everything and they've kind of done right by their customers and have intervened and have played a role in what that rate case ends up being. So it's a very long, very thorough, quasi-judicial process that we have to go through to change any of our rates. The municipality, which you've experienced, can raise rates with an ordinance, 2 readings of an ordinance, without having to kind of open the books and show everything and why you're getting to where you're getting. There's a very, very thorough process that involves a lot of different parties. There's even an agency at the state level known as the Office of the Rate Counsel. It's basically the ratepayer advocate who makes sure that any rate increases or any changes to rates are prudent. And they play a very aggressive role in advocating for the ratepayer. So that process is very thorough, and you become a part of that once we get past this 2-year freeze that we're talking about here. Just cut to the chase here. What's going to happen in 2-3 years down the road is you're going to be part of a large New Jersey American Water rate case, and you can probably expect anywhere from a 2 to 4 or 5% rate increase for the typical customer. It's going to be reasonable. It's going to be in that realm that folks can handle, and it's prudent for us to make sure we have enough capital to make sure we make the investment in the utilities. So that's the rate piece here, and I want to just quickly hit on this graph that I have here, the 5, 10, 20 years. If you compare what we're projecting, what I just kind of tried to explain on what our rates are going to look like in the next few years, long term, and you compare that to what the city has projected in the Remington and Vernick document that went before the DEP, the Emergent Condition Report, there are savings anywhere from $1,100 in the first 5 years to $3,200 in the first 10 to $11,000 for the customer over 20 years. Now, look, I know this is projections and we're looking out 20 years. And if I could predict what's going to happen in 20 years, I wouldn't be working here. I'd be investing in the stock market somewhere else, right? But this is, this is what we have here before us today. We have a projection. We'll stand by our projection. This is our best guess of what's going to happen in the future. And the city's professionals have given you a guess of what happens if you continue to own the system and invest in it. But I think there's going to be savings over the city remaining as a standalone entity versus partnering with a large utility.
Well, I'll interject briefly. Your estimate, to your credit, uses the one that assumed a 25% grant for all costs for the city going forward. Lately, the grant amounts that the city was receiving were closer to 10 to 15%. So this is a, this is a rosy estimate on the city side of 25% grant. That is not likely to continue to occur going forward. So this is really a best case scenario on the city side.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. We tried to be, I guess, judicious in which one of the scenarios that you had presented in your report. And yeah, you're right. This is probably the most rosy one for the city, that you're going to get this grant funding. Scenario number 4, just offhand, the other one that you had presented, that was, making the capital investment and raising rates to accommodate that investment. That was $15,000 of savings between the city's projections and our projections. So, either way, significant savings long-term for a city customer. Okay, and I'm sorry I gave you a lot to chew on, and we'll stay for questions as long as we need to. Once we're done, I only have a couple more slides here. If anybody has questions for Dave or myself, we're happy to stay and answer those and get in any level of detail you'd like. On the customer service side, we're a 24/7 operation. As Dave mentioned, our call center is available 24/7 for emergencies. If there's a main break, there's a 1-800 number, you call it. We'll have somebody out there, and I think 20 to 30 minutes was the estimate that we had provided. And then for routine business, handling your bill, paying your bill, getting service from a customer service rep, scheduling an appointment, that's available from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. For non-emergencies. We bill monthly. We're pretty proud of that. A lot of utilities, especially municipalities, bill quarterly just because it's easier from a labor standpoint. We have systems in place and an online platform that allows us to bill monthly. And monthly billing, we think customers like it. You can build that into a regular monthly budget. You can set it up for auto pay on our website, have it withdrawn directly from your bank account. Or if you want to still write us a check or pay by phone on a credit card, you're able to do that as well. So a lot of options for the customer to pay their bill. Convenient, bill pay options. And I mentioned that billing assistance program, which I have another slide here on that just gives you a little more detail, a little more flavor and color for what that program looks like. There's two pieces to it. The first one is if somebody gets behind on a bill for reasons of, death of a spouse or a loss of a job or any kind of, catastrophic issue that really creates a challenge for someone paying their water and sewer bill, you're eligible for a grant to get you back on your feet. I believe it's up to $500 and you can access it every year or so to get your, clear your account balance, let you start fresh. Kind of get over that hump, that rut that you might have kind of been in given a life situation. So that's one piece of it that this program helps our customers with. The other one is for people that meet certain income thresholds, income criteria. If you're within 300% of the federal poverty guidelines, and the numbers are there on the screen, you're eligible for what can be up to a 30 or 40% decrease on your monthly water bill. Essentially, we take the monthly service charge and we credit that off your bill if you meet the eligibility requirements. And that's a program that we're proud of. We'll advertise it heavily in the community. Once we're the water provider there, we want people enrolled in that. People that are eligible for it, we want them to take advantage of it. And again, nobody should have to go without water or wastewater service. We want to make sure everybody can afford that essential service. So that's a real program that we're really proud of. And then my last slide, and then again, we'll take questions or hear from you all, is what we do for the communities that we serve. We want to be a partner. We lend that helping hand in anything that you're doing in your community. We do in-kind donations when we have laptops or anything, assets that have kind of reached the end of their useful life for us that might be a tremendous asset for a volunteer fire department or an EMS or a club in the community. We donate those things. We want to, be a part of that, the community in that regard. We have a speakers bureau. We'll send people out. We'll send our water quality experts to your school and educate the students on, what good water quality means. We offer community events and plant tours. If you want to come see what one of our facilities looks like, we do that. We participate in, community days, national nights out. You name it. If you have a program in your city that you want a presence from your utility app, we will be there. We give money. We have a mayor's charity of choice donation that we do every year at the New Jersey Conference of Mayors. And we have 2 annual grant programs that we're pretty proud of as well, our environmental grant program and our volunteer firefighter and emergency responder programs. Any one of our communities are eligible for those. If you have a project that benefits the environment, we encourage groups in the communities that we serve to apply for those grants. They can be upwards of $10,000. And same thing on the volunteer firefighter and emergency responder grant program. That's a benefit that we bring to the communities that we provide service in. So with that, it's pretty much kind of all I wanted to cover. And again, then we'll take kind of Q&A, but if I could just kind of recap, we provide a long-term solution to the challenges of operating and owning a water utility in the 21st century. It's a challenge these days for a small municipality to own and operate a utility. Flint, Michigan opened a lot of people's eyes. We hear a lot about perfluorinated compounds and PFCs and water quality challenges and storms, frequency and intensity of storms, and the impact that has on a utility, on a community. COVID, the pandemic that we're dealing with now, as a small utility with a couple employees, that's a risk there. New Jersey American has 800 employees, and if we have a couple operators, God forbid, get sick, we have redundancy and resiliency kind of built into what we do on a day-to-day basis. So being part of a larger regional utility makes a lot of sense in this day and age for a community. You eliminate a lot of risk or reduce a lot of risk for a community by being part of a regional system. I mentioned our commitment to capital, $9 million in 5 years, 14 in 10. You can bank on that. We're going to make those investments. That also means activity in your community, right? So when we're spending that money there, our crews and contractors will be eating at your restaurants and maybe shopping in your stores. That brings a lot of economic activity to a community that might not have been there before. The purchase price, can't understate that and can't overstate that. Paying off the debt and mortgage, you become kind of debt free overnight. Gives you a lot of financial flexibility for the governing body. And, finally, that rate stability, that stable or lower rates that the city insisted upon will become a reality if this sale kind of makes it to close. So we're excited. I hope that came across in the presentation and what Dave and I shared with you tonight. And with that, I'll open it up, send it back to the council and see if there's any questions for Dave or I.
Hi, Nick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, if I may, I did have a couple questions. My name is Carl Timbers. I'm new, so it's like I wasn't here in the beginning, so I have a ton of questions. But
Sure,
just
welcome.
a few. I did see that you guys were going to replace all the city meters. Is there any cost to that to the customer?
No, that's all borne by us. We're, as a regulated BPU regulated utility, we're required to change residential meters every 10 years. So we believe most, if not all, of the meters in the city are going to be in excess of 10 years. So therefore, one of the first things we want to do is get in there and make those meter changes. There's no cost to the customer associated with that. It's part of our cost.
Yeah, Carl, I'll add on that. I don't think we've replaced any meters in the last 10 years. And beyond that, another topic that's sort of adjacent to this is new accounts, connection fees. The city currently has about $5,000 in connection fees. New Jersey American's connection fees are zero.
Okay.
So that helps to facilitate development going forward when you eliminate a $5,000 expense to add new water and sewer accounts.
And to do those meters, you guys don't have to access through the street or anything like that, right?
I'll let Dave take that question.
It depends where the meter's located. They're usually either in a pit located near the sidewalk, or sometimes they're in customer homes. So if they're outside, there's nothing for the customer to do. We'll change it. If it's inside their homes or basement or crawl space, we'll make an appointment with the customer ahead of time to schedule time to go in and change the meter.
Okay. My next question is, so sometimes people have issues like a pipe breaks, and they can usually go to the municipality and say, I had an issue. I see my usage is way up, and they can get some type of credit. Maybe it may be possible that they can ask for something, especially if they're a senior citizen. If something like that were to happen with you guys, do you have the same process?
Yeah, we do. We'll work with the customers. What we usually offer on a leak, on a typical leak, is what we call a leak adjustment. If you can kind of prove that you had a toilet that was running, that you changed the flapper on and your usage dropped in half, And you can kind of prove that and show that you fixed that. You get to our customer service group and they'll work with you on an adjustment for the bill. So we're always reasonable with customers in that regard.
That's great. The next one I had was surcharges. Right now, I just look at my bill. So I see it's like $140, I think, in surcharge before you even get to usage. When you guys come in, are we still paying those same surcharges or are they lower?
You will with the 5% reduction on the water side. So the proposal now is a couple dollars off of the regular quarterly surcharge and the WQAA surcharge. So again, we'll adopt those rates that you have in place when we close, and they'll be 5% lower on the water and identical for the sewer.
Okay.
To speak to the rate structure, I mean, you guys have your fees named a couple of different things, but for all intents and purposes, there's a fixed fee and there's a usage fee. And the concept for that is there's pipes in the ground that you need to pay for whether you're using them or not. And then there's water production and distribution that needs to be paid for. So that the rate structure, you always want to have a fixed portion and a usage portion so you can cover both of those things. Obviously, New Jersey American's take is going to be a little different than yours, but Nick, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure that you still have a fixed fee and then a usage fee, correct?
We do, yeah.
So
we did the math for a typical customer using, I think we used 4,000 or 5,000 gallons per month, which is typically what a regular residential customer would use. You'll see about a $40, $50 reduction to what you're paying today annually, and those rates then will be frozen for the minimum of 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Last question. This is real quick because some people have pools. If you have a pool, I think they set up a special meter just for that initial fill up. Do you guys do the same thing?
Yep. If the customer calls in and says, I'm filling a pool, I want that to be, it's not going down the sewer. I want to be exempt from the sewer charges, the volumetric sewer charges associated with that. We'll work with the customer on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Councilman Dash. Can we talk about the fire hydrant costs to the city?
Sure. So we do charge for public fire protection. So each hydrant in our system across the 192 communities we serve gets a what's called the public fire hydrant charge. Our rates per fire hydrant is around, it's like $40 some per month. Your rates are a lot less. The city negotiated hard. I give them a lot of credit for us to adopt the same rates that you have today, which is about $125 per fire hydrant. So that's the charge that we would charge back to the city post-close. It's about $30,000 per year that you would pay for those fire hydrants. It's a charge that you're already essentially paying. The general fund, is my understanding of it, and Jody will correct me if I'm wrong, but your current fund already pays that to the water and sewer utility for the hydrants. In the city, you'll continue to pay that just to us. And it's important to note that you're going to save money too on the debt service of paying down the debt too. So that's going to free up some money in the budget. So it's not, another $30,000 on top of your existing current fund budget. There's going to be freed up debt service in your budget to help cover that cost. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. Jody, could you give us an idea on annually what we would be paying for hydrants then?
Well, right now we pay $30,000 to the utility for the hydrants. And I believe based on the figures, it's going to be right around that same amount, if not just a tiny bit less. We have 219 city-owned hydrants, and it'll be 125 a piece. So I believe that's like a little over 27,000 when we calculated it.
Right. So basically it's a wash.
Yes, correct.
Well, it's
Okay.
a wash immediately, and then presumably New Jersey American's going to phase, because they have statewide rates, they're going to end up phasing into what their rates will be. So the eventual annual cost at 219 hydrants and around $46 is around $120,000 a year. So ultimately that's where it would be headed.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have an idea how many years that would be of a phase in, Nick, you think, until it would get to that?
It's hard to say. Typically, when we're phasing in rates that are significantly lower than ours and we acquire a system, it's 2 or 3, sometimes 4 rate cases. And we do rate cases every 2 or 3 years. So it's usually almost a decade-long process before you've kind of made your way up when the rates are that different. It might also be a good time to talk about the municipal accounts. This is something that always comes up as well. Towns are hesitant to sell because now they're going to get a water bill and a sewer bill, whereas they didn't before. It was free. The city negotiated for us to keep those water and sewer charges away from the current fund for a minimum of 10 years. And we've committed to that. So the municipal building, the library, the fire department, all that stuff is going to continue to be free service for a decade.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Councilwoman Heist. I was asked about the water coming out of the hydrants for a fire. If we're charged on that water by the gallon.
Nope.
Okay, so we're not. So
Nope.
There's no meters on the hydrants in order to record the amount of water being used to put out a fire.
Not for firefighting purposes, no. That's all. That's why you pay that standby charge. When it's needed for a public fire emergency, you can take as much as you need.
Well, and Don, I can tell you that the fire departments are required to do pumpage reports where they have to estimate how much they pumped out when they report to a fire and hook up to a hydrant. So they have to estimate based on the RPMs of their pump and how long it ran. I don't know why I'm explaining this. Scott's on the phone. Scott, you mind chiming in? I'm sure you know a lot about more than I do.
Yeah, Ryan, I did that for quite a few years.
There you go.
What happens is that with each fire, you do you estimate how much hydrant, how much water was used, gallons per minute with your pump, how long you used it for, and then you calculate how much per incident was used. Usually, a small room and content fire, it's about 5,000 to 10,000 gallons, used. Which we document, and each year we send into the New Jersey American Water, how much we use. We break it down, per month, per, fire, and everything like in those kind of things. But there's a formula that we use that, makes it easy, and we can report pretty accurately to New Jersey American Water.
And there's no charge to the city for that water.
No.
Okay, I just wanted that confirmation. I was understanding,
Absolutely.
but I just wanted to hear it out loud. Thank you.
It is good for us to know that stuff. So what Councilman Trethal is going through is helpful for us because we like to keep an eye on what we call non-revenue water, water leakage, water loss. We want to know how much are we taking from the ground and how much is actually, being billed at the customer point. And what is that percentage that we're losing through leaks in the system? And so we can target that stuff and try to get ahead of it. So it's good data for us to have. But we will never charge you for the volume of water needed for firefighting or for training purposes. If the fire department's going to train and wants to, hop on a hydrant and tells us that's all kind of included in the standby charge you pay. No volumetric charges.
The only time that I've ever had any issues is when we had the extreme droughts a couple of years ago, and New Jersey American Water just asked we didn't use as much. That was it, because it was depleting what they were able to pull out of the ground. Due to the water level and water tables, we just couldn't go out and flow, for an hour, 10,000 gallons every other day. We just had to cut it back. And that was the only issue that was ever, and they asked us to do that, and it was just during a certain time frame during the summertime when we had a drought. And in recent years, they haven't asked anything for us to hold back on training.
Yeah, that was the same drought where restaurants weren't allowed to give you water unless you asked for it too. So there was
correct
conditions.
This is Mark Emmer. I just have 2 quick questions. The agreement in section 5.5, where it talks about bonds and loans, it talks about some loans or obligations that are uncallable, and it states that they'll be addressed through a debt defeasance schedule. Could you explain that? A debt defeasance schedule?
I'm good. Let Jody take that one. Yep.
Basically, you can't pay, even if we received all the money tomorrow, you can't just pay off all the bonds. They have minimum terms that they're guaranteed. So it's an analysis done basically to figure out how much money you need to set aside now for when the bonds are allowed to be paid off. So it's just like a summary of how much money, and it's guaranteed. Like we would basically put aside the money now, and then when the bonds are able to be paid off, they will be paid off. So it's the minimum amount of money that we need to pay off all the debt.
And that would be money set aside from the sale, correct?
Correct. Some of the debt is able to be paid off immediately. Some of it is not. It has that minimum term. So basically you set aside money, I guess with like a bank or some type of agency, and basically they, you pay off your debt as it comes due, but you set aside that money and it's guaranteed to pay that off.
Thank you. And could you explain what happens with the leases for the cell towers that are on the water plant?
Sure. So the cell tower lease was sold in a bulk payment. I don't remember exactly what the year was, but it was a 20-year lease term. Our negotiation with New Jersey American are that we will keep the full lease payment, which is $400 and some thousand, for the duration of the loan period. Essentially, it will be, the rights will be the city's. And then at the end of that, New Jersey American will assume that the tower rights and whatever leasing rights there would be going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
You have any questions?
I have a couple questions if none of the other council people or the legal advisors have any. Okay, so just out of curiosity, and maybe it's not for public knowledge, but it seems like you're really investing a lot of money, which is awesome to help, do repairs and whatnot. But I guess I'm curious, like, how are you going to get a return in investment? And I guess I was wondering in particular, will you be selling our water to like other municipalities? Would that be one of the ways that you're going to get a return on your investment?
So we spread all of our costs over all of our customers. So, it is no secret. I mentioned earlier, we're successful and we're investing in the utility. So there is certainly, a return built into the investment that we make in the utilities. That's just the nature of the beast, the structure of, a private utility like ours. But given our size and how cheap we can buy pipe and valves and hydrants and our ability to spread costs, it's minimal. It's nominal for the average customer. If in the city itself, you only have 1,500 customers over which to spread capital investment. And when you need a big investment like you do at the end of the useful life of a utility, which is essentially where you are, that cost is going to be tremendous. But if you spread it out over everybody, it's minimal, it's nominal for the average customer.
Cool.
As far as selling, water outside the boundaries, no, I mean, we have our franchise areas are kind of determined and bound. And there's no, master secret plan to take the Egg Harbor City water and send it, ship it anywhere other than right there. And then, quite frankly, Ryan can speak to it too. There's not, we're not sitting on a gold mine of water here that we'd be able to, pipe somewhere else and make a fortune on. And finally, we're a regulated utility. So the board ultimately sets our rates based on the cost of providing service. So if there were some additional sales we can make, somewhere else, the customers would really bear the benefit of that, not necessarily us, because our costs are our cost, and then they're just spread over a customer base. If that customer base is bigger, then it's less impact for everybody. And that's kind of the advantage that we bring to the table, given our size.
Cool.
I'll add a couple things to that. To your first question about the timeline, obviously you need a return on investment. The ROI for utilities, the period of that can be much longer than for standard businesses. New Jersey American is operating on the assumption that they will own this in perpetuity. So, they don't need to make money tomorrow. They can make money over the next 100 years because it will always be there. And like you said, they are a regulated utility. So essentially they go to the BPU and justify, these are our costs. We're allowed to make a small percent profit. And that's how it works. It's not like you can go to their competitor. That's how the whole structure is set up with regulated utilities and the BPU oversight. To the other point, you guys have a fixed allocation. It has to be renewed with the state every 10 or 15 years. I don't remember exactly what the period is. but the state reviews what your needs are, what your projections are for your expansion, things like that, and they adjust your allocation. So we, a number of years ago, actually had a negative adjustment to our allocation because things were getting more efficient. We were using less water. So the state said, we don't need all that anymore, so we're cutting your allocation back. So there are, you know, state agencies that are overseeing that process. You can't, they couldn't just, you know, contract with Poland Spring and start pumping out 100 million gallons in addition a year. You know, they have to justify that and stay under the numbers or under the thresholds. And there's an annual pump, a maximum number of million gallons per year, million gallons per month. There's a gallon per minute. And there's a max number per week, I believe. So you're regulated, you know, essentially at all times. It's not just, oh, you know, you can hit your allocation of whatever per year. You have maximums that you have to stay under at various points in time to sort of keep you honest, you know.
Cool, cool. So I have another question. The connection that you're going to make from Egg Harbor City to your main line, could you explain the benefits of that? Like how that works? You know, in case we have like some kind of catastrophic thing go wrong.
Yeah, I'll take that question. Well, essentially, it's what we refer to more as an emergency interconnect. So we would, you know, we'd install a pipe to physically connect the two systems. We install a chamber, what we refer to as an interconnect or meter chamber. It would be fully automated through our SCADA system. So we would be able to control it back at our control room in Egg Harbor Township at Fire Road. And it would only be used as emergency. If there was an issue where, say, there's power failure or we lost wells due to some type of whatever reason. In short term, we can supply water from, you know, the Galway Township area into the city. If there's a major fire, say some huge fire, and the system couldn't keep up with it, we could open up the interconnection and provide additional supply to the city for what was needed. And again, you know, this would have to be, it's all gets pre-approved by the state, all these things that we have to submit it to them, not for every emergency, but for the construction and installation of, and connecting the two systems. We need to get state approval first for that. The DEP regulates all of that.
Cool. Tracy, I got a couple things to add to that too. One anecdotal, one, you know, sort of serious point. If something happens to the supply in Egg Harbor City right now, we're bringing in bottles of water because that's it. There is the supply and that is it. If we can't distribute it out to the city, if there's a problem at the plant, at the wells, things of that nature, there's no backup plan. There's no one to turn to. Having the ability to go to a computer and turn a valve, you know, you can isolate the area that's having a problem and get your supply somewhere else. That's a huge, huge benefit to the community. I can tell you, working with Jerry, there was an incident where there was a large fire and Jerry called the fire department and said, turn off your pumps, stop, just let it burn. We're going to run out of water. So they literally had to stop fighting the fire so that the city didn't run out of water. So having that additional supply as well in instances like that is another potential, you know, life-saving feature, I guess, of the sale. So, you know.
So I have two more quick questions. So I was thinking about the frequency of storms we have on the coast and the customers that you have. So I was just thinking, like, worst case scenario, say there's like a really big hurricane and for some reason you lose, you know, you need to send repair people out. How would you determine which locations to send your repair people to first?
Well, that would really depend on the nature of the emergency. Really, we would prioritize in what we felt was what area needs the most attention. It depends on you know, how much water supply we have, water usage, or what the damage was, and we prioritize and then dispatch accordingly. I mean, we have. It depends on how big of a storm. We practice drills regularly throughout the state. One of the benefits of New Jersey American Water, as well as being a part of the American water system, is we can bring in resources from areas that may not be affected by a storm. We have operations in up North Jersey, Shrewsbury area, Monmouth County, all the way up north in the Short Hills area. We also have operations in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland. When there's a large catastrophe or assistance needed, we can bring in additional resources from outside the area to help, and vice versa. We can support them as well.
Well, actually, that brings to mind another mini question. How would you charge for that? Say that we have, maybe even just in a typical scenario, like a water main breaks and you have to send out your crew to fix it. How do you charge for that?
That's built into our rates. It's all. There's no additional charge for one main break, two main breaks. It's the fee. It's the cost of owning a water system, and that's why we're aggressive in our capital investment in our renewals, because we want to limit and minimize customer disruption. And main breaks are very disruptive to the community, to the residents. So we invest to upgrade systems to reduce those numbers. But when they do happen, and we do get main breaks every year, they're repaired, and there is no bill or no cost for that individual main break to the residents or the customers. It's all built into the rates.
Cool. And my last question is referring to the meters on the individual homes that are going to be replaced. I'm guessing they'll be digital or something. Are they also wireless or not?
When you say, well, wireless, correct. Currently, right now, we have an AMR. We have a meter reading system where we drive around, and the meter talks to a computer in the vehicle, and we pick up reads that way. There's another technology that we're investigating and we're piloting, that the customer meter can continuously talk to one of our central computers and provide more frequent meter reads. And that system, again, we're piloting, but that's a benefit to the customer, where they can log into their customer account and see water usage and trending and things like that. But that system hasn't been installed yet in our area. It's just a pilot.
Okay, so then what, like, say if you were gonna start replacing them, what would the new meters be like? Because right now, like
it's the same
kind with the little spinning wheel.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, we do have digital heads now, but it's the same thing. They have an indicator on them, that a digital readout, and they have a little indicator. I don't know if everybody knows either. Your meters are usually equipped with either a little triangle or something like an indicator that detects real low usage. And you look at that to see if maybe you have a toilet or something that's leaking, or a small leak in your house that you really can't detect. And if you see that moving, you know there's something there. So it's similar to the analog dial, read, but it's digital. It's very similar.
Okay, yeah, because I'm happy with the spinning wheel one. I guess I'm a little bit Wi-Fi averse. Like I'm one of these people who's a little bit sensitive to electromagnetic stuff. Like I unplug my Wi-Fi router at night and stuff. So I'm actually just happy with something similar that I have that's not like transmitting a lot of energy going back and forth. So
well, in a case like, I understand, in a case like that, if we would put the meter out in a pit out by the curb near the street, away from you and outside of your home, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's all.
So,
hi, this is Nanette Galloway. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. I looked at your capital improvement list. I didn't see on there anything about maintenance of the water tower, and it looks pretty bad right now. Needs to be painted. And is that in your plan? And how soon would you do it?
So they do sort of vaguely refer, Nick, if you want to jump back to that slide.
I'm not sharing anymore right now. I'll let Dave handle this question.
All right, well, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get off mute. That for us, the maintenance, it gets a little technical. The maintenance of the water tanks are not considered a capital improvement for the private company. That is more of an O&M expense. We do have a separate budget for water tower coatings. We refer to them as engineered coatings because they are a lot more than a simple coat of paint. But with this tank, we would certainly do an inspection of the tank, both inside and out, and determine what it needs, whether it needs to be just cleaned and recoated or full recoating, et cetera. And from that, we would put it on our list to have it painted or corrected.
But you're not counting that into your 5-year capital improvement plan at this point?
No, because it's not a capital expense. It's a different category of expense.
Okay.
It's a minimum expense.
Okay.
So anything for any cost for that, which we estimated the recoating to be about $500,000. Any
Right.
expense would be in addition to what's shown here.
Okay. That's all I had.
We did get a question on the chat, which says, what is the city projecting to pay New Jersey American each year? Okay, so let me stop sharing so it went away. Hold on a second. Okay, and where is that money going to come from, since there will not be any utility bills being paid to the city? So we started to go through this a little bit earlier. We're expecting the city to have additional revenues. Number one, from collecting taxes from some of the properties which New Jersey American Water will own, which will now be taxable. We're anticipating savings on the bond that we were previously paying. Because as you mentioned before, you'll be paying off, you can pay off the city's debt, so you'll pay savings on what would have been bond payments and interest on bond payments. There was an additional point that just escaped me. Nick or Jody, if you have anything that I'm missing while I'm trying to recall the third point, feel free.
I think you covered it, Ryan. I mean, the big thing is that saving that debt service is going to free up, a good chunk of money in the current fund budget for any costs that are going to come from not being the owner of the utility.
I just go ahead. I just remembered the other one now.
Go ahead.
The city has had to subsidize the utility budget numerous times over the last 10 years. So money has had to been transferred from city taxes to cover utility expenses. That won't ever happen again if you would sell the system, obviously. So, you have from the tax rolls had to incur some costs to subsidize the utility. So again, there would be other funds that are, have been utilized towards the utility that would not be utilized towards the utility anymore going forward. So hopefully that addresses the question. And then we got another one. George Frick asked, when is the sale projected to occur? A lot of variables go into that. All of this has to go up to the BPU for review and approval. I believe at this point, we're sort of targeting a late summer, early fall time range. That still seem reasonable to you, Nick?
Yeah, we're looking, the city would likely approve this in early, middle of March, at which point we'd submit it to the BPU for their approval. They have a 90-day statutory timeline to review and approve the deal. So that takes you into the summer. And then we'll need a little bit of time for transition and integration activities to make sure we bring it over in a smooth process for the customers and for the employees that are going to have to operate the system post-close. So yeah, we're looking at the third or fourth quarter of 2021 is likely when the transaction would close.
So we got another question in the chat. How will the city address employee salaries currently charged to the utility? I don't know that we're fully at liberty to discuss people's positions without them being here. I'll defer to Angela on that, but I can tell you that some of the positions are partially funded from the utility currently. Obviously, the utility would not be able to partially fund those anymore going forward. As part of this agreement, New Jersey American has agreed, obviously they can't promise everyone a job who works for the utility, but they have agreed to interview everyone and offer them priority in hiring for any positions they would be eligible for. My recollection from previous meetings, the city offered to retain employees of the utility department that were interested in transferring to public works, the ones who worked on the operations side. So obviously some of those details need to be sorted out, but I don't believe I'm allowed to go position by position. Is that a fair statement, Angela? Erin, you muted, but not having a response from her. That's my understanding. So again, I can't go position by position without violating some race notice issues from what I understand. So
That's true, Ryan. We can't discuss employee salaries at this time, and we apologize for that, but that's the law.
yeah, so hopefully my feedback has been enough to, at least develop a partial understanding. We got another question. Will New Jersey American clean out sewers at least annually? So I'm going to address part of this just so that we're clear. New Jersey American would not assume any storm sewer assets. So if you're talking about stormwater inlets on streets, stormwater piping, anything like that, the city would retain all of those systems. This is a sale of the city's water and sanitary sewer systems. And then I'll punt to New Jersey American on what their procedures are for cleaning and maintenance of those systems.
Yes, sure. Again, I'll take that one. We typically clean on a regular basis. Usually it's annually. We, depending on the system, if we see a significant improvement, we may push that out to every year, year and a half. But also where we have trouble spots in the sewer system, we have a quarterly or even a monthly cleaning schedule for the spots that tend to give us problems, typically around restaurants or high grease areas, that we'll clean on a more frequent basis.
So if any other questions from anyone? Who that was, if you want to try again. All right. Well, I mean, hearing none and seeing none, I'll turn it back over to the council president.
I think
Thank you,
Keith was
Ryan.
trying to ask something.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I think Keith was trying to ask something, but was on mute. Am I wrong?
Can you hear me, Ryan?
I can now.
Okay. Having a little issue here with I think you muted me, but I got it off. So, so my name is Keith Adams from Egg Harbor City Utility Department. I just have a couple quick questions that kind of came to mind as we were discussing this. I know Ryan can tell you that we've been back and forth with 1,000 questions so far in the last 6 months, but so our billing structure going forward with New Jersey American to the residents, is that going to go to a monthly water and sewer charge?
It will. We'll just convert the rates that we bring over at close from the current quarterly charges to monthly charges and divide by 3.
Okay. Next question I have, the meters. I know we talked about the meter upgrade program and that you guys would be facilitating in the first couple of years to do a full meter upgrade and some sort of radio unit system for remote reading. We have probably done close to 300 and some meters in the last 10 years upgrade, and we do have a partial census radio unit system now. When I say partial, the system's complete. It's totally usable, but the system hasn't been completed where every house has a radio unit on it. I would say that we're probably 25 to 30% done. Meter pit's mostly done. A lot of the South Egg Harbor section is done. Would you guys use that program and expand on it, or is that something that the city has put out money for, spent, and it would just be kind of, put to the wayside? Now, I know every utility uses their own sort of meter and metering system, and they have their likes. We're obviously a census system here. So I'm just curious about that.
So Keith, I'll partially answer that. We actually had meetings with census. My understanding is that even if we wanted to continue moving forward, we need to upgrade. I don't remember exactly what the figures were, but there were pretty substantial cost increases to continue to utilize this system going forward. From what I understand, we have about a third of the city covered. There's like 500 meters that are radio reads and 1,000 that aren't.
Correct.
But again, in order to continue using this same system, we had to upgrade within Census's sort of proprietary infrastructure. We had a couple of meetings with them. I don't want to bring up cost numbers because it's years ago. I honestly don't remember, but they were significant just to keep within our own system. So I mean, I'll kick it back to them as to whether they would, try to adapt some of the existing meters or convert them. But
Yeah, our current system is a Neptune system, and the issue we have right now with some of the census is just the compatibility of having that data get entered into the billing system. So we would use what we could in the interim until we could convert it over to what's compatible with our system and our technology.
Okay. Next question I have, I know we talked about the tap fees that the city currently charges per unit. I think Brian gave a number somewhere around 5,000, give or take. With the future of Cedar Creek out there by the high school, I know that we've been in talks with expansion out there. The revenue that would come back to the city if we were to maintain and keep the system is, based on the amount of houses, is over $1 million in hookup fees. If a contractor comes in, my question to you would be, obviously I heard that there's a $0 hookup, and it would be extremely attractive to a contractor or developer to come in. Where is the cost put on? Is it put on the developer itself to run the water and sewer mains through the basically it would be woods now that we're clearing to build these houses, where we've done a lot for ourselves in Egg Harbor City. We've been proactive, ran the mains out to these systems to try to encourage housing. So with that being said, two-part question. Would you guys run that out to the system on New Jersey American's dollar, or is that going to be something that is thrown back on the developer and that could sway a future developer from coming in here to Egg Harbor City?
Yeah, good question, Keith. So the way our developer services program works is the developer does fund extension of systems. Existing customers should not be paying for, new development. So the Board of Public Utilities actually kind of prevents us from investing capital for expansion of a system for a developer project. So the developer does initially fund any water main extensions in our city, in our system. What we do have though is what we call our revenue refunds. So once that development is in place and there's customers in the homes using water and sewer that are now generating revenue for the utility, that developer can get money back. Essentially, it's 2.5 times the revenue generated by those new customers. A developer could be reimbursed because now they've built, something that's of value to us, something is a revenue producing asset, and we pay them back. We look at that 10-year period. We'll look at how much revenue that's going to generate over a 10-year period, and they will be able to get some of that back. So there is an incentive for the developer to grow, and they'll get some of their money back if their project is successful. But we're actually, we're not allowed to invest in prospective extensions of our system on the customer's cost.
Keith, I got a couple of things to add to that from the city side and the expansions that we completed, and frankly the current development and looking forward. When we expanded the service out for the high school, we constructed a pump station and water and sewer lines, and we connected a bunch of existing houses, and it did facilitate some development. But the impetus of that was not that development. And when the development went over to the next block where the utilities weren't, the developer was responsible for installing them. They at their own cost installed the new sewer lines, water lines, et cetera. The planned project going forward, there's a potential for 250 units, single family homes out at the Cedar Creek area. In our conversation with D.R. Horton, who's the prospective redeveloper, they're fully anticipating having to construct all of those utilities on their own. And then as far as the connection fees, we had a frank discussion with them to say, listen, this was $5,000 in connection fees. That was coming to the city. That's not going to be there anymore. So we expect that the purchase price will increase some commensurate amount to offset that so that the city can continue to collect that revenue, but be relieved of the expense on the utility side. So that's, hopefully that, helps answer the question.
Yeah, so Ryan, just to circle back to, we don't charge any connection fees at all. So developer is responsible for the mains and the services to the curb. That is on their dime until again, it's a revenue producing asset that we pay them that 2.5 times revenue refund on, but there wouldn't be any kind of per home connection fee on top of that. So there's another incentive, for the developer to go through under our ownership, because they won't have to pay that connection fee. If they were under city ownership, they would have to pay that.
And Nick, if I could follow up on that, it's the mayor. We do have some people in Egg Harbor City that are not connected to sewer and water because they just don't want to pay that connection fee. That would obviously apply to them too, correct? They wouldn't have to pay. There are houses in Egg Harbor that don't have water and sewer, and they are within the area. That would
correct. So if there's a water and sewer main in front of your property, the first service, as long as it's a routine, regular water and sewer service, is no charge. We will drop the service from the main in the street to the curb line. Now the customer will have to pay from the curb line into their home on their private property, but the actual service from our main to the curb for an individual lot and block is on us.
Thank you.
Sure.
So Nick, another question for you, and I apologize for the amount of questions in advance. In a situation where we now, as a utility, we take care of the sewer mains up to the first sewer lateral, the water mains up to the meter pit or first curb stop. In a situation when you guys take over, is there any change in that for the customers, or is that sort of like the status quo with New Jersey American? So you guys, like South Jersey Gas would cover to the meter. You guys would only cover the same thing we cover, correct?
Correct. We essentially cover, in the right of way. Once it gets onto private property, that's going to be the homeowner or whoever owns the property responsibility. But anything in the street, to the curb line is ours.
Okay. And to go back, I think I have one last question. The connection, which would be the interconnection that we talked about down on Route 30 going, I assume, to Berlin Avenue there. So we're a system that's treated with fluoride was put in with referendum vote. Once New Jersey American inquires the system, if the city council were to vote to go that route, how would New Jersey American approach the fluoride situation? Would that have to go back to a referendum vote, or does that become now New Jersey American's decision to make based on you're the sole owner of the system? It's not a public entity anymore.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Keith, and a little uncertain. I mean, right now we have no intentions of making any significant change in the treatment processes. And as Dave mentioned, that interconnection is going to be an emergency interconnection because our system right now is not fluoridated. So when you have fluoridated water in one system and unfluoridated in another, that creates some challenges. Emergencies, obviously, you want to keep water in the pipes, so you do what you have to do. But we have no intention right now of making any change to the treatment processes. If we do, that's something we'd certainly communicate with you and coordinate on, and happy to have a robust discussion with the community on what their desires are if we were to make any significant change like that. We certainly need to understand the history better, though, Keith. I know you guys went through a lot when you made that decision, when you built the plant to put the fluoride in there. And the last thing we'd want to do is want to come in and upset the apple cart, for the community. So it'd certainly be a decision we'd make with the leaders in the town if we ever decided to eliminate that. Okay.
And going back to the interconnection where we're talking about how we treat with fluoride, I'm assuming you guys in your Galway area do not treat with fluoride. Being that we put a CCR out to our customers every year, and I'm going to ask a question I should probably know the answer for, Dave and Nick, so forgive me. Is there, in an emergency situation, does that forego the fact that you can either take water from us to your side with fluoride being added to, or obviously it's not a huge issue for you guys to pump water in an emergency situation without fluoride in it. It would be just the same thing as us not sending fluoride into the system. But being that we do the CCR every year and we're following back to the consumers on that, is it something that would just be a simple update to the CCR saying, hey, in an emergent condition, this could be what you're doing, and then we attach a consumer confidence report on your end? How would that work?
No, I think, for emergency purposes, I don't know how much the CCR would need to be updated. Things would pretty much be the same for the most part. So I don't think there would be an update. We don't envision a need for any of the city water to flow back into Galloway, so that wouldn't be an issue. And then for an emergency purpose, again, flowing into the city, the CCR, I mean, the only difference would be the fluoride component. So there may be a small clause on there about that, but I'm not sure it's warranted. I mean, that's something that we would also defer with the state, the DEP, on what would be needed in that case. But I don't know if that CCR would have to be amended. If there's a significant amount of water that flows in, we would have to include that comment. But as the system, if the acquisition goes through, we have the CCR for our system. So really, Egg Harbor City would be included in our CCR, and it would be broken out kind of separately with our system, with our CCR on our CCR. So it would be separate. You could see it, but we would have the one CCR.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I just go back to that question because I know when we, as a town, talked about it, it was a very hot button topic for the town. And I could be honest with you, it's a very corrosive chemical. It's something that I'm not necessarily in agreement with keep and treat the system, because it is a very corrosive chemical, and 99% of what we put in probably gets dumped out on lawns or down the toilet or washing cars. So I don't know if it's actually a benefit for the people, but again, it is a hot topic, and that's why I asked about it, because going forward, the people would, have that question for you guys. And I'm glad you said that there would be citywide involvement with the powers to be to make that decision with you guys. It makes, I'm sure, the community feel better about that. So I'm sure I'll have another question once we go on, but I'll be done asking questions. My last question is, I know we're not going to answer the uncomfortable questions about employee transitioning, and there's a process. I'm sure you have Ryan's number, Nick or Dave, if maybe one day when you get a chance next week, if I could just give you a couple private questions about the vetting process on how you go about it. Because I have worked with the guys that I work with in my department for some time. I have some good guys here, and I'd like to kind of, make sure that they're taken care of and given an opportunity. I'm just trying to see how you guys go forward. And we could talk privately about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Keith. That's really important to us, is that, we kind of give those folks an opportunity to come and work for us if that's something they want to do. We're going to have a lot of time, the city's going to make this decision in the next couple of months, like I mentioned. And then we're going to have a 6 to 9 month kind of transition period where we, make decisions about staffing and how we're going to integrate. There'll be plenty of opportunity for those discussions, but we're happy to talk with you, at your convenience about whatever you want to share with us.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, guys.
Thanks for the good questions.
I want to circle back and address a couple comments. First, I think we proved the non-consensus on the fluoride issue in the chat as people responded. But we got a question, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes ago. I don't want to have Keith. It says, when repairing streets after work has been done, is there a certain company used? And what streets in the area have been repaired? So for everyone's benefit, the vast majority of the water and sewer infrastructure is in the terraces in Egg Harbor City. That's part of how the city was laid out. Our current street opening ordinance requires, I believe it's full width replacement anytime there's a trench, a continuous trench down the road. I mean, we've had to alter it over the last couple of years because it's really targeted at South Jersey Gas because they're the only outside utility who does work in the area at the moment. And they, started directional drilling most things. So our ordinance sort of became irrelevant for what they're doing. But, Nick and Dave, I'll yield to you on what your, typical standards are outside of the city's ordinance for restoration after completing work in the right of way.
Yeah, typically we follow the city ordinance. I mean, it really depends on kind of the amount of opening and kind of what we're the extent of the work area. But we'll typically, Brian, follow what's required by the ordinance when doing those projects, when doing repairs. We'll say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, presumably you're not allowed to expand much beyond that because you'd have to justify that to the BPU. So that certainly makes sense.
Yeah, and the 9 million we're going to spend in 5 years and 14 and 10 is going to mean a lot of new roads, right? Because we're going to be, investing in aging water and sewer pipes down a street. We're digging up a street, you're going to get a new road out of it. That's what we usually find when we buy these aging utilities. One of the ones we bought in 2015, Haddonfield Borough, they actually kind of got a double whammy on the roads. We were doing a lot of work, replacing a lot of water and sewer mains. They were getting a lot of new roads from us. The sale of that system freed up $1 million in their municipal capital budget. And they put that $1 million right to work in replacing new roads, which then also meant we were taking a look at the assets underneath those roads they were proactively replacing. And if there was an 80, 90-year-old pipe down there, we were replacing that as well. So, generally what that means when you sell an aging utility to us, it means a lot of new streets in the community at very low rate impact, as we discussed.
So circling back to the chat, there's another not question, but comment that I'm going to read and let the New Jersey American folks address. Someone by the name of John commented, he said, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do and that we have no say anymore. So I mean, I'll yield to Nick. You guys engage with the public, so I'll let you talk about how you address that.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, at the end of the day, everything we do is for customers. We want to hear from customers. We want to do right by the customers that we provide service to. And, everything we do at the BPU level is public. Their meetings are public. Anytime we want to change rates, we got to do a very extensive public hearing process where we go out into the communities and kind of show our cards. All of our documents are available on our website to dig in and review kind of what we're putting before the board to justify a rate increase that we think is appropriate. And you have a say in that as an individual. You can participate in that as a group. You can intervene in that as a city governing body. You can hire an attorney and fight any rate increase that we're putting out there. There's a lot of transparency involved in our rate making processes, and we encourage customers and communities to get involved in that. So, again, I'll kind of just end where I started there. It's at the end of the day, we try to do right by our customers. And I think you'll find that if you talk to the 192 communities where we provide service, to the leaders in those communities, to the mayors, administrators, you either have good things to say. They either have good things to say about New Jersey American or don't have anything to say because the problems just get handled and there's no issues related to their water and sewer service. So we have a really good track record in the state, and we stand by it, and we look forward to adding new communities to our system.
So does anyone else either like to participate via chat or through audio?
Hello. This is Richard Hesse. I have a question. Is the sewer system going to stay a gravity fed system or is it going to be a pump system?
I mean, if it flows by gravity now to pump stations and then it pumps to the ACUA, it'll remain that way.
Okay.
We'll make improvements to pipes in the ground and pump stations as needed. But yeah, nothing's going to change as far as how it operates today.
Okay. Thank you.
Just so everybody knows too, the city only owns the collection piece of it. You're just collecting it from the homes and transporting it to the ACUA, the Atlantic County Utilities Authority, for treatment. That stays the same as well.
Yeah, I'll provide a little context to that. The vast majority of the system, like Nick said, is gravity. It flows down to pump stations. It goes to the city's largest pump station on 50th Street. That pumps to the location of what used to be the city's sewer treatment plant. The city no longer operates a treatment facility. We have an agreement with the ACUA, and they have a large pump station over near the city's Public Works building. So we pump to that, and then the ACUA pumps to their larger transmission main, which brings it down to their treatment facility in Atlantic City.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, so we'll go back to the chat. We just got a comment that says, while the improvements promised are needed, many have elderly residents who cannot afford increases and endured a more than 50% increase over the last 5 years. I saw the assistance available. Do some low income to apply? What about our elderly residents?
So we are, the Board of Public Utilities really leans on that income-based threshold for who's eligible for a customer assistance program. Age and senior discounts are not looked upon favorably by the board because, quite frankly, there's a lot of seniors who can afford to pay the water bill, and just because you're above 65 years old doesn't mean you need customer assistance funded by other customers. So the board, our regulators, don't look very favorably upon senior discounts. If there's a system that we're requiring that has one in place, generally we've taken them. We've adopted them. I don't believe one exists here, so I don't think we're adopting one for the city. But anybody that meets that income threshold, we encourage them to apply for it and get that monthly service charge discount.
Okay.
And I should also just reiterate that it's a pretty aggressive program. It's 300% of the federal poverty guideline. So, take what the federal government says is the poverty guideline, multiply it by 3. If you make less than that on a monthly basis, you're eligible for it.
Can you actually do that math for us real quick and give us the monthly for a single individual, the monthly income limit for that program?
Yeah, let me share my screen again. Can you see that?
Yeah, you presented in a monthly value, and I think that's hard for people to digest.
Yeah, so a two-person household, if your monthly income is $4,300 a month or less, you're eligible for this program. I think we have a lot more customers that are eligible that are just for some reason aren't taking advantage of it because they don't know about it, or because they're maybe too prideful to apply for it. But look, it's a program that's there. It's meant for to make sure people have access to clean water and wastewater service. So we'll encourage people, and we'll continue to advertise it and push people to get involved in that program. And again, it's 3 times the federal poverty guideline. So a lot of folks are eligible.
So just to convert this into something that's easier to digest, for a single person, the income limit would be $38,280 per year. For a household of 2 individuals, it would be $51,720 per year. For a family of 4, the income limit is $78,600. So it's not a program for the indigent. Like you said, it's 3 times the poverty level is a fairly high value, relative to what you might anticipate from a normal assistance program.
And it's regardless of age. See, it's open to anyone, as long as you meet the income requirements, seniors, anyone.
And Nick, does that income include Social Security?
I believe it does, yes. Really good questions, and thank you for them. This has been a helpful, robust discussion. I'm glad to see we're getting a lot of this out there, and you're all engaged in asking good questions. So thank you for that.
This is Nanette Galloway again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm chair of the city's green team, and I'm wondering if you have any water conservation programs or if you actively get involved in educating the public on how they can save water.
Yeah, that's excellent. So I mentioned our environmental grant program. You're the group that you're involved in is exactly who we'd want to be talking to about, programs or projects that you have in the works in the city that we can help partner on. So we'll make sure we get in touch with you about that program once we're the owner of the system and encourage you to apply for it. And then if your group wanted us to come in and bring experts that are a lot smarter than Dave and I to come talk about water quality or any number of topics related to the water industry, we're happy to bring folks in to educate you and the community. We're a member of Sustainable New Jersey as well. So very active and very involved in that organization.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jumping back to our chat, the person who provided the question about the 50% increase over the last 5 years, et cetera, said that the grant was up to $500. Nick, I believe your rate relief is percentage based. Is that accurate?
There's two pieces to the program. This is like the monthly credit on the fixed service charge. The other one I mentioned was, if somebody gets behind on their bill for some reason, lost a job, you're out of work for 3 months and you can't pay your water bill, we'll work with you. And I believe the grant is up to $500. I think it's yearly. It's not going to pay the whole bill for the year, for sure. But it will help, kind of get back on your feet. You rack up a large, you're trying your hardest to make your payments, but you just still can't catch up and you're on a delinquent list and you can't make that payment. We'll work with you through that program to get you a credit, to get you kind of back on your feet. Yeah, we try to work with the customers too, to the extent we can. We don't want to shut anybody off. If somebody can, make an earnest attempt at making a payment, and if you get behind getting on a payment plan and making that, routine payment, that's what we want at the end of the day. So we do our best to work with customers that are struggling financially and again, can't afford that wastewater bill.
Anyone else with a question or like to submit or ask?
Yeah, I had one question. This is George Sen. I know, Nick, you had talked about the rate relief and you had shown what the projected savings would be for 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years for a residential customer that used so much water. What about commercial customers? Are they going to see the same kind of rate relief? Yeah, I mean, I know your rate structures must be different for commercial from residential customers.
Yeah, really good question. So Ryan mentioned, you have the fixed charges and the volumetric charges. The fixed charges change depending on the size of the meter. So a typical residential is using a 3/4 inch meter. A large commercial might be using a 2, 3, or 4 inch meter. The charges are different depending on the size of that meter. The 5% reduction that we're talking about is going to apply, across the board. There's a fixed component of that will apply for the 5/8 inch down to the 4 inch meters. So there will be some modest rate relief for even those larger customers that are in that commercial class. And we also worked in a reduction to the volumetric rates as well. So those commercial customers that use a lot of water will see a reduction on the commercial side as well, on the volumetric side as well. We didn't play out this scenario here for every different customer class or different usage classes, but everybody will see that modest reduction just pre-close and that stability, both short and long term with future rate increases.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Anyone else?
Ryan, looks like there's another question in the chat box.
Okay, so what happens to customers that have a balance due when New Jersey American takes over?
Yeah, I could take that, Ryan. So that will remain with the city to collect that balance. So that the city will have, you'll still owe it to the city, whatever you owed them at the time of closing.
Good question. Anyone else? And we'll leave it open for another minute or so.
Hey, Ryan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Keith again. So real quick, I got a text question to me now. So, and I kind of know the answer. I just want to ask the question so it goes out to for everybody that's involved that's listening. So the question I got was the facility on Philadelphia Avenue that we currently work out of now. I think Nick and Dave already kind of expressed would be remote operated from Egg Harbor Township. Would there be anybody staffed in the Egg Harbor City building, or is that something that would just be visited? And then also response time for emergencies.
I'm gonna let Dave take that one.
Yeah, I can answer that. Right now, there are no plans to have someone work out of that facility on a full-time basis. That's not to say that we wouldn't have somebody working there remotely occasionally. And as far as the response time, it really depends on the situation, but we anticipate around 20 to 30 minutes response time for issues. That's after hours. During normal hours, we'd have someone in the area that would be, 15 to 20 minutes.
Do you guys have crews that, like field crews that work the night shift?
We have people working 24 hours a day. It may during the the 12 to 8 shift. It's not a crew. It may be a single employee or 2 employees during that time. But core hours are 7 to 7:30 to 4. And then we'll have people from like 4 to 12 and 12 to 8. But during those graveyard shifts, there's only 1 or 2 people working really to get a response. And they are, they are our utility mechanics, and they are people that can work on crews and repair things, but they're initially there to get eyes on what's going on. If they need to start shutting things down, they can, but they'll typically be the ones who call in additional support and help to resolve the issue.
Okay, thanks, guys.
So we'll leave it open for another minute or so. So we did just get a question coming to this. The only annual fees are hydrants. So that would be the only annual fees to the city.
Yeah, it'll be a monthly bill, but it'll be that annual charge divided by 12 essentially.
Right. And then after the first 10 years, the city will be responsible for paying for usage for its facilities.
Correct.
We had the discussion of New Jersey American cannot commit to providing water for free in perpetuity. That's not something that the BPU would allow, because essentially it would require all of their other customers to subsidize the city's usage forever, which is not really a fair situation to other ratepayers. So we were able to negotiate a period. Again, it was 10 years, which is a pretty extensive period for that, but yeah, it does sunset at 10 years. All right, so I mean, at this point, I'll return it back to Council President Ricky. I will state, however, that we're still here for questions. If a resident, an employee, anybody has questions, feel free to reach out, submit questions to the clerk. We're happy to respond to anyone. We've met with numerous individuals. Again, we want people to be informed. We want people to understand what this is and how we got here. In fact, we did get a question as I was talking about. So will there be future meetings? We'll entertain this again at future council meetings. I don't believe we intend to have another future dedicated single purpose meeting like this. This is literally the only item on the agenda for this meeting. It was just to discuss this. So again, we'll continue to talk about this at public meetings, but I don't envision another single purpose meeting like this. So, Council President.
Thank you, Ryan. To close out, I just want to open up for any final comments from the mayor and council. Mayor Giampetti, if you have anything.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm very comfortable with the negotiations and the agreements that we've come to with American Water. I feel like they're going to be a partner. They're not out to harm us or our community in any way. And one thing I would consider as we consider the 5% savings on the water in the first 2 years, which wasn't brought up, that it may have been brought up slightly, but there's this distinct possibility that we would have to raise the rates if we stayed on our own in the next 2 years. So you're also saving that increase rate. And Ryan and I had talked about this earlier today. So even though it's a 5% savings in water, it could potentially be much more than 5% going forward. So now we're locked into that savings and I feel very comfortable with it. And I'm looking forward to being a partner with American Water.
Do you mind if I add something to the mayor's point there? She did bring up a key issue.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I'm glad you brought that up. We did sort of allude to it, and Nick continually used the phrase rate stability. So something we discussed at length in a lot of the utility committee meetings is that the comparison is not what are our rates now versus what are New Jersey Americans' rates now, because our rates, in order to keep up, like we did talk about this in the beginning, our rates need to go up another 15 to 20% to address even the minimal capital needs that we identified. So it's not a fair conversation to say, well, it's our rates or New Jersey Americans' rates. We would need to increase rates pretty significantly, pretty immediately to keep up with the system's needs. So that point that Nick kept hammering home about rate stability, they're not shy about the rates will increase. He said our average over 10 years is 2.6%. So they're right at a little over inflation. Our rates would need to increase pretty significantly immediately and continuously going forward in order to keep up with the infrastructure demand. So that is a very valid and necessary point to discuss.
Thank you, Ron, for explaining that. Mayor Giampetti, do you have anything more?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilwoman Heist, do you have anything?
I just want to say thank you to our utility committee for the negotiations with American Water and for American Water. I think you guys, it was a lot of hard work and that you guys went above and beyond to give our city what we need to make this a successful transaction.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sefton, do you have anything? All right. Councilwoman Brown?
Yes, I would just like to say thank you to Ryan and to the guys at New Jersey American Water for being very transparent and being very, very knowledgeable and able to educate the community basically on any questions they had. I'm very comfortable with the deal that the utility committee was able to negotiate for us. And I think that it would be very, very beneficial for us as a town to do this moving forward.
All right, thank you. Is that everything?
Yes, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Dash, anything?
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for a nice professional meeting. It was very informative. I want to thank the general public for their participation. Of course, your input is very, very important to us. I also like to thank Keith Adams. You brought up some great points, and we appreciate all of your energy. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Krathel, anything?
I'd just like to thank New Jersey American Water Utility and also Ryan, for the hard work. It's a lot of food for thought, and the input with the public as well. We do have a lot of considerations. I like to just put it out there, if people have questions or anything else, they can reach out to me. I can get answers for you. But thank you again.
Thank you. Councilman Timbers, anything? Councilman Timbers? All right. Councilman Wright, are you on? Anything?
Yeah, I'm here.
Anything?
I just wanted to thank everybody for a great meeting. And Ryan, I just want to say very thank you to you. This is something that I brought up, I think, back in 2016. And I'm so glad that it's finally, hopefully, goes through. And I think it's going to be very beneficial to the cities, to the citizens of the city. And thank you again, guys.
Thank you. Councilwoman Clark, anything?
Just to kind of piggyback on what everyone's been saying, thank you everyone, both citizens of Egg Harbor City and also New Jersey American Water for taking the time and really informing the public and, giving us this information. And I look forward to hopefully making this work.
All right, thank you on that. All right, if nobody else has anything, in closing, Ryan, thank you for your presentation and the work on this. David and Nick, thank you for taking the time tonight and answering our questions and any concerns and for the presentation. We all greatly appreciate it. So I would also like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation tonight from the public. With that, everyone have yourself a great night and rest of the week. And if I can have a motion to adjourn. Second. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and everyone have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe.